I'm an immigrant who came here by choice, on merits, with the point-based system, which I really love. And I've spent 60% of my life in Australia. I've built a family, worked really hard, owned a home, and I've contributed to technological advancements in manufacturing. I'm deeply concerned about the far left shift in our country, with public schools pushing a woke mindset, a surge in immigration of all sorts, wokeness in climate policies with the skyrocketing prices. So my question is, how long before Australia becomes unrecognizable from what it has been, the one that attracted me for its fairness and opportunities based on nothing else but merits alone? Thank you.
Maria.
Thank you for your question. I just want to start by saying one thing. Whenever we talk about woke agendas, right, and we talk about the far left movements and being super extremist, we are effectively talking about people who say advocate for the LGBTQIA+ community, who advocate for gender diversity, who advocate for these communities that are marginalized. And we hide behind the word woke when what we're talking about is speaking up for communities who need to have their human rights, dignities, and freedoms respected. So I'm a woman of color, I'm a queer woman of color, and I'm also somebody who's got 2 degrees. I worked in corporate, in HR, I studied management. So when we talk about merit and you're concerned about when you say the left movement, I assume you're talking maybe about diversity quotas or affirmative action and things like that. I can tell you why they exist. They exist plain and simply because underrepresented groups have faced systemic barriers and disadvantages when it comes to them accessing opportunities, right? And so when we have these movements, if we're talking about fairness and opportunity, if we really did live in such a meritocracy, then I think we would have equal representation of women, people of color, queer folk, and people with disability in positions of power and leadership already. Yeah? So in my opinion, because we do need these progressive movements to progress people who have started on the back foot and face significant inequity so that they can play catch up, because we all deserve to be seen and represented.
Janet, I want to bring you in because, you talk about your own experience coming to Australia and merit. How did you come to this conclusion? Like, what is your own experience where you feel like there is...
I haven't really faced any disadvantage. Like, I would very much like to think that, what I'm doing is because I'm good at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you are very good at what you're doing.
Absolutely.
I mean, I wouldn't take pride in thinking that I was just given something, I wouldn't want that.
Sorry, can I I'm going to start by saying I'm woke. But
you're woke.
Me too, girl. Me too.
I do consider myself woke for 2 reasons. First of all, woke is a term that originated in the 1950s, 1960s in the Black liberation movement. And I think all of us can accept that in the 50s and the 60s, there was indeed discrimination. So there is a very different idea of what woke is and what it has become popular with. But even having said that I'm woke, I do accept that there are some problems with wokeness. Just as there are any problems with any social movement, there are excesses. There are times in which people aren't generous enough. Yes, there is absolutely problems. It doesn't mean that if you're woke, you're perfect. It means that you can behave in certain ways that you must hold yourself accountable for, and you must be held accountable for if you exceed. So I accept that criticism of woke, and I think sometimes people who are tagged that we want to push back and assume that the movement is somehow all saintly. It's not. Like any social movement, it has its problem. However, I also didn't come to Australia on a merit basis. I came as a refugee. That, to me, leads me to a point that I want to make, that merit is an important concept, but it's not without bias. There's a beautiful book by a guy called Michael Sandel that talks about the tyranny of merit. I would highly recommend it because I think it really deconstructs merit as a framework for which we use in certain contexts, but not in all contexts, right? For example, housing. Housing is a human right. if we were to believe that housing is a merit-earned thing, we will lock out a lot more people out of the support they might need. There are going to be areas in which we do emphasize an element of merit as a pure measure, but it cannot become the only social value in which we measure everybody's access to even fundamental rights. So I think that's where I differ. My final bit. My final bit is the idea that somehow merit and diversity represent certain group of people. Despite the fact that I came to this country as a refugee, I'm lucky. I'm absolutely lucky. I went to school, I did a law degree, I did a BA, I did practice, I worked hard. Yet every time I walk in the room, people think that I'm a diversity thing because of assumptions like that, assumptions that assume simply because you came from a certain thing or hold a certain view or you're woke that you're sort of somebody who got there by chance. That's also destructive because people like myself who have also really worked hard get trashed, get undermined, get diminished because we're women and because we look like this because somebody think that we don't deserve what we've done. That is a problem.
Janek, very powerful point. But Janek, I'm wondering if there is some ground where we can bring you two together. Isn't that partly what you're saying that annoys you, that you feel like you've got merit, but people go, oh, you're here just because of this reason?
I think when I look at the laws, they're all sorted. So what are we even talking about? Like, the laws are sorted.
I don't know.
But is it that?
Tell me, like, which legislation still discriminates or, disadvantage or whatever it is. I think it's all sorted.
That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is assuming that even when we put in legislation to assume a particular perspective, for example, until I had kids, I did not realize how hard it is that we've built everywhere for people who can walk because I didn't have a pram. The assumptions that sometimes we make, the assumptions we make when we pass legislations, the assumption we make when we build societies are built from our own preferences. Doesn't mean people are evil. It just means that sometimes we think equality looks a particular way, but actually in its practice and its delivery, we discover that other people might need more. It is not a matter of saying that these people need to be charity and looked at. It's a matter of recognizing that even the very idea of merit isn't something that you as an individual somehow came up with. I did not choose a particular mindset. I was lucky to have it. Yeah. So we have to have some grace as human beings to realize that our existence, perhaps it's much more clear to me as a person who got out of a refugee camp, born out of refugee camps and came to Australia, and I know the only difference between me and my friends back in South Sudan that are as talented, as smart, and as hardworking is the opportunity to come to Australia, and I did not earn that.
I've just got to check. Do people even know what woke means?
No.
I knew that. People keep referring. Is it just like a woke? Are you woke, Jon Faine?
I'm the token pale, stale male on the panel. I mean, But
you're
woke,
a diversity target.
If woke means that you care about other people and you care about human rights, you care about inequality, you care about fixing some of the problems in society, then call me woke. That's fine. But
it's interesting sometimes, guys, in the political world, a word takes off, but most people in this audience, Zoe, we're like, I don't know what that means. It's meaningless.
I think a lot of people don't know what it means, actually. And I think it's a fluid meaning as well. I think to a 60-year-old, it means something quite different to a 15-year-old, to a 30-year-old.
And if you don't watch Sky After Dark, you wouldn't know what it's sort of, referring
and I think
to anyway.
As soon as, Jon Faine says he's woke, then
dead.
It's just, that's it. It's dead in Gen Z now, isn't it? I say that lovingly,
Absolutely.
know that.
Post-woke soon.
You have to come up with another term.
If you're woke, I'm no longer woke.
Okay.